Hello everyone, this is Sylvie Verlan with Business Central Musings. We talk here about Business Central tips from all aspects of functional development or help for users. In my last video I covered customer ledger entries and we drove one of the most important processes in Business Central and in any ERP, the order to cash process. And I think it was just natural to continue to have a follow-up from that YouTube video and blog post on my website sverlan.com, and today I thought of exploring the process that we generally call procure to pay process. What we're going to focus on this YouTube video, and of course the blog post is doing the same. We're going to scrutinize the vendor ledger entries created by Business Central. We're going to delve a little into accounting practices required to manage the general ledger accounts associated with procure to pay process, and we're going to look at some other key considerations when making purchases from vendors. So in large, what we're going to cover, we're going to buy a product, we're going to send the invoice via email to the supplier, we're going to receive and invoice the order, and ultimately we're going to close this process with making a payment to the supplier. This is the topic. Let's get going.
As just mentioned, we will start with creating a purchase order, and then we're going to email it, and we'll continue with posting the order, creating a receipt and an invoice, and then ultimately we're going to pay the invoice. But so if we were to talk about creating the purchase order, which is step one in this procure to pay process, what should we do? Where should we start from? We have here Business Central version 23.4. Two ways to create a purchase order. Those are at least the ones that are in the base application and the ones I know about. There might be some other. So we can go to the vendors. Of course, you need to have a role that would allow you to work with accounts payable entities like vendors and purchases. If you don't, then if you have the power to give yourself a different role, you can do that into my settings and choose maybe a role that includes that. Right now I'm on a business manager evaluation role. This is the default role for my user. So I'm going to pick up this vendor Fabricam, and to create a new purchase order we would go to new document and purchase order, and in a few seconds we're going to see the new purchase order. We notice that the vendor is already displayed. We're going to have to fill up this field because it's a mandatory field. But pretty much all we need to do here is to select the item we want to purchase. Let's say it's 1896 S Athens desk. We need to pick up a quantity, how many we need. We're going to take one. Tax group code, I'm going to go simpler here just because I want to demonstrate and make it easier to understand the GL distribution at posting. So we're going to take a tax group that does not involve taxes. And that's pretty much it. This is enough for us to, of course, after we type something here for the vendor invoice number. If you've got the vendor invoice number in your hands or you have it available, you need to fill up this here in the vendor invoice number. We saw that we didn't have to enter the vendor number, which is not going to be the case if you try a different method to create the purchase order. The other method is to just search for the purchase order page and click on new, plus new, and choose your vendor. We're going to choose Fabricam, and we are back to where we were using the first method. So we're going to take, again, fill up the quantity, make it easier here with a non-taxable group code, tax group code, and we can see this is the total. This is going to be 0, the tax. So yes, that's how you create the purchase order. Now let's go to the first one, and now we need to follow through with the next step, which was to email the purchase invoice, and that's also extremely easy. From the ribbon, choose print send menu and then click on send. Facing here your vendors Fabricam sending document profile page. It's the default one, but let's say we want to email, and the rest is pretty much the same, similar to the default. Sending profile, let's click on OK. We're running 2 reports, and now we're rendering the reports. For some reason it was longer than I would expect, but in the end we've got the email outbox, I think it's called. Let's check. Email outbox is the table behind this form, and the page's email editor. Let's close that, and by looking at this, what do we notice? Of course, this is going to be the email where we send this email to. We can see the body of the email. The body of the email looks nice, but yeah, we're not very clear where it's coming from. And also we see an attachment for this email, is the purchase order. If we click on it, is the purchase order confirmation. Yeah, so that looks good, but what if we want to change the body? What if we want to make the attachment slightly different? The source of the body and the attachments are coming from this page, report selection, say purchase, and we are on on an order. So let's look at order here, and we see the report is 1322 purchase order, and we also see that this report selection is used for email attachment and for email body, and the email body layout is here. So if standard purchase order email is this one, and if we export it and open it, now we can see the vendor number label here. Let's close these guys. The vendor number label, and then the vendor number. Buy from vendor number, and then the document title, which is purchase order, and then greetings text, hello Fabricam, and then the body, of course, with word table here, and closing text, sincerely, and then sales purchase person name, that's probably missing for this vendor, but then we end up with the address. So that's where the body is coming from, and of course you can customize that for to your needs. We also saw the invoice, the purchase order confirmation, and again, where is that coming from? From the same select report selection purchase. We are on an order, and if we were to see the layout of report 1322, that would be very close to how the PDF here looks like. Okay, let's continue. So yeah, we would end up just sending the email, and the vendor will get the purchase invoice confirmation. When they get the purchase order confirmation, it's a signal for them that they can load it in the truck and send it to us. When the purchase the item arrives at our warehouse, we need to receive it, and that's happening at the warehouse. A warehouse employee would inspect the item, and it will place it somewhere in our warehouse. Of course, following that would be to post the receipt of the desk that we ordered. So how would that happen? He would click, or she would click on the post button and choose the receive and click OK. The system will create the receipt and will inspect the receipt immediately. To inspect the receipt, go to the order and then to the receipts, and we see here the receipt. We can look at the receipt, edit. We can't really edit it, but we can inspect it, and we can see more fields. And this is basically the purchase receipt. We can also look at the entries associated with this receipt. Obviously, when an item enters our warehouse, the system is generating an item ledger entry of type purchase receipt, which you see here, and the quantity is 1. And we can also see, by clicking on entry, we can see the value. When a merchandise enters our warehouse, the value of our inventory account grows by the value of that item. And we see one record of type value entry, the type of the of this entry record is direct cost, and the cost amount is 780. This is the direct unit cost of the desk. And we saw the purchase receipt. So this would be what the system generates when we post the receipt. The next step in is to create an invoice, and we do that from the post, and we can click on invoice, and after a few seconds the system will show us the posted invoice. And again, this is a record that it's a different type of record. It's a purchase invoice header, the table, and the lines will be dropped into a record purchase invoice line. We see it's 122 for the header and 123 for the lines. We can what we can do here, we can inspect what the system did to create this invoice, and the invoice is behind here. We don't have to look at the posted purchase invoice, but we can look at the GL entries that were created. And I like to order them by entry number just to see how the system actually generated the entries in which order. And we see that the two GL entries were a washing of the direct cost. The GL account is 10,700, which is the inventory account. So we washed the direct cost of the desk using the 10,700 GL account, and then we have the next transaction here is again on the 10,700, which is the inventory account. We're adding merchandise in the inventory, therefore our inventory value grows, and if it grows, that means the debit amount, this 780 is going to be a debit amount, and we actually purchased, therefore we owe money. Therefore the other account that's going to be affected is the accounts payable. We are increasing the liabilities with this transaction, and we can see the credit amount here being 780. So debit increased for the inventory, credit increased for the liabilities, but overall they're counterparts of the same transaction. We move next. We have a tax entry, we have a vendor ledger entry. Let's have a look at the vendor ledger entry. This is an invoice. We have a document type invoice, and we see remaining amount is $708.70. We also see the due date is 3/31/2024. So we need to pay that by this amount by 2024. We look, if we want to see the details are shown into the detailed vendor ledger entry, and that is an initial entry. It's basically the detailed vendor ledger entry is going to show you what happened in relation to this entry, to the vendor ledger entry. So far, only one is the initial entry. When we get to the point of paying the invoice, we're going to, as part of creating the payment, we're going to find the invoice, this invoice, we're going to apply the payment to the invoice, and we're going to post that application and the payment at the same time. So that would be, if we go back to our entries, that would be the entries associated with posting an invoice. We don't really see anything here. I mean, we've seen the detailed vendor ledger entry. For value entry, I think we looked at it. It is, the value entry is associated with the previously posted item ledger entry. So let's have a look. If we were to go into item ledger entries, let's order them by entry number. They are already ordered, I think. So 665 is the purchase receipt, and if we were to look at the entries, we see now, and let's order also these guys by entry. They are both related to the item ledger entry 665, but this would be the order. We first posted the purchase receipt, and then we posted the purchase invoice. Last step in the procure to pay process is paying the guy, paying the vendor. We got something in our inventory, but we didn't pay anything. We owe money actually to the vendor. And how would we do that? Well, there are a few ways. From the vendor, we can go to ledger entries. We're looking at the vendor ledger entries associated with the vendor Fabricam. I'm going to order these guys again by the entry number. And this is the invoice I created. And if we want to pay this invoice, we see we still owed 780. We can use a link here in the menu, create payment. And that would that brings up this window, create payment window. It's a page, it's a standard dialog page where we collect basically some data before we create a journal line, a payment journal line. This all looks good to me, and clicking on OK, we have the system prepared the general journal line in the background. We are in the payment journal. We see the line that was created. We also see the amount. We see the system already applied the payment towards the invoice. We see that this is a computer check, and all we have to do is print in the check. And that would be the check. And yeah, we consultants in with Business Central usually get, or with almost every implementation, we get requirements to change the layout of the check, slightly change, or sometimes bigger changes. But this would be the way we print the check. The check goes into an envelope, and it gets sent to the vendor, and the vendor will go to the bank with the check. The check will be posted in their bank account, and the bank will talk to our bank, send that transaction to our bank, and we're gonna see the money leaving our bank account. You would have to go through the bank statement reconciliation to reconcile the check with this transaction here, with the payment here. After this is done, we would post the payment journal line. When we're posting, we see two transactions, two GL accounts. So when we posted the invoice, we had a debit to the inventory because merchandise entered the inventory, and we had a credit to the accounts payable. Now we're paying it, so that means another asset account, which is the bank account, will suffer a loss because we need to withdraw the money to pay the vendor. Therefore, this is going to be a credit, $780 credit, and we're going to close our payable with this transaction, with the payment transaction. So bank account, payable, they're closing now the $780.70. I'm going to delete this here because paying the vendor can be done in multiple ways. One way is to generate a check. The check can be generated as we saw with the create payment from the vendor ledger entry. The other method is to, before we delete that entry, we need to void the check. And then now we can delete it so that we can recreate it with a different method. So the payment, we can send a check to the vendor one way, or we can send an electronic payment. I'm not going to cover electronic payment today. Today we're going to cover the check side. How do we do it with the check? The check can be done from the vendor ledger entry with create payment. We just saw that. The other way is to use this very beautiful report, suggest vendor payments. It's in under prepare, suggest vendor payments. Last payment date is 3/31. This sounds like a good deal to me. The due date for the invoice was 3/31, so that sounds good here. We're gonna select only this vendor, and we don't really want to check other journal batches. Summarize per vendor, or maybe we do. I'm not sure. I think I might have let's just disable it for now. The vendor number is 1000. It all looks good. We have more than one option here. We also have something like available amount. This is interesting. And we have also vendor priority. I had recently got recertified on MB 800, and one of the questions was addressing this report. So read up on vendor priority, and also read up on available amount. How are these two options, report options, working together to prioritize the invoices to be paid? Because we might have lots of invoices, but we don't have enough money in our account. So who do we pay? The vendor priority and the available amount deal with this type of use case. Let me know in the comments if you want me to talk about it in a very short video. Otherwise, it should be pretty easy, and the documentation is on Microsoft Learn. If you don't find it, I'll post it in this video in the comments. And I think we're ready to go. We're going to try it. The post, it says the posting date is later than the due date, so let's put that on the 31st. And if we click on OK, we see now 2,851. And if we look at line apply entries, we see the system found the 2 transactions, and it requires us 2 invoices, and it will try to pay both. One is the one we created and one is a previous one. So yeah, we can click on OK. I had to adjust the balance account type and balance account number. It is required to have a bank account here. If we print the check, it's coming up with a check, and we see our invoice, our order here being paid by the $2,851 check. And again, we are ready to post it. We're going to preview the posting, and we see the result is a payment on the vendor ledger entry. The remaining amount is 0 because it's been applied against the invoice. And let's look at the GL entries. This is the bank account. So credit 2,851, credit debit for the accounts payable. And yes, I think this is it. So to recap, we created a purchase order, we emailed it to the vendor, we posted the receipt, we posted the invoice, and then we paid our invoice. And this is in large Procure to pay. If you like the video, please click the like button. If you didn't subscribe and you want to see more like today's video, please subscribe. If you want maybe different topics in a new video, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for being here today. I'll see you in the next one.